Welcome back to another episode of Sabres versus the Atlantic in this series that we have been doing in the lead up to the 24-25 NHL season. We have been pitting the Sabres up against their Atlantic Division foes, comparing their lineups, talking about the other team's storylines, who they added in the offseason, who they lost, and seeing and deciding who we think comes out on top between the two. As always, my name is Jonah.
And I'm Christian.
And today's episode is on none other but the TML, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Kings of the North.
As some call them, the center of the hockey universe, or the center of the NHL.
Nah, that's Montreal. That's
They got
my
Hockey
personal
Mecca.
opinion.
Hockey
So,
Mecca sounds a lot cooler.
so we have Hockey Town in Detroit. We have the center of the hockey universe in Toronto. And you have Hockey Mecca in Montreal. What does that make us? Because we're kind of in that
We
line.
have
Hockey
one.
Hell?
We
Well, it
have,
was
well, it
Hockey
was,
Heaven.
I was going to say, it was Hockey Heaven for a little bit there, as they called it.
It was for a long time. People forget how good of a franchise this was before 2012.
Yeah. Anyways, back to the Maple Leafs. What was supposed to be a huge sweeping offseason of change wasn't really one that I think was as big as people thought it'd be, as we'll get into. People thought that this would finally be the year that the core four was broken up after yet another loss to the Boston Bruins in Game 7. Everybody, I think everybody collectively, not just Maple Leafs fans, not just the entire NHL world, I think collectively came together and agreed that okay, this has got to be it, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not even it's funny. Of course it's funny that they kept losing to the same team over and over and over and over. But like this is done. Like something has to give here. And they made changes and then they made some good changes, but they didn't make the change that I think people really expected.
No, I could trump that up to bad timing. Well, I guess I can't make any more excuses for the Maple Leafs organization when it comes to, oh, the cap could have gone up when they signed their four core guys, and that's kind of what screwed them over. But the last couple of years, they kind of stuck their own foot in their mouth when they fired Kyle Dubas when he was pretty much dead set on trading one of the core four members. They fired him, hired a new guy who was like, "Oh, I just got here. I need to figure out what's going on." Ran it back, had the same issue, and then they just, what, a few months ago, they have a new CEO of MS, what is it called? Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, which is kind of the umbrella for all the Toronto sports franchises. And now he was like, I just got here. I got to figure out what's going on. And it's Groundhog's Day again. So I can't make any excuses for them this year, especially if a lot of people like I know the SDPN network, they were talking about the Maple Leafs maybe taking a step back, maybe being a wild card team.
I don't think that's crazy because, as we'll get into, they didn't really touch the forward group and the goalies. They have question marks, even though I think it's a good tandem. They do have question marks. Most of their upgrades came on the defensive side of things, but at the end of the day, it's still the Maple Leafs, and that core four has proven to fail when we get to May and June. Well, not June because we never get there, but it has been shown to fail
April,
in April and May.
not barely May.
Did they get to May? Did they
I
get to May when they played the Panthers?
I don't know. They must. I think they did. I think they may have gotten into because if my memory serves me right, the last time the Sabres made a round two, it was like early May, and that was almost 18 years ago.
As you were kind of explaining before, though, there's a lot of missteps that got them to this point. But at the end of the day, nothing is stopping them. Well, I shouldn't say nothing is stopping them. It seems like the Mitch Marner saga has that you're what you were saying about timing, it includes Mitch Marner into that because by the time, the year they fired Dubas was their last opportunity to trade Marner 100% under their own power because July 1st his no move clause kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously they fired him, hired Brad Treliving, and now we're here. Now it's the early in the summer. It seemed like the rumors were they were scared to end up dealing him and possibly losing that trade because it's extremely hard to win a deal like that. It takes a
We should know.
while. I was gonna say we as going through the Eichel saga, it takes a while, and it's incredibly tough to get your preferred return. I mean, when the Eichel trade went down, Sabres fans were pretty happy with what the final value was, but that was like off the expectations that we expected kind of a lot less, just the way that thing was going. If Eichel had been traded a year prior, coming off of a near MVP level season, the return probably would have been a lot more. They probably would have gotten 2 first round picks, maybe another prospect, maybe another roster player. Who knows? And with Marner, like you lost that. You lost a really big part of that. And yeah, it's got to be so frustrating as a Maple Leafs fan
Mm-hmm.
that this has just continued to kind of press on.
Yeah, you lost a lot of value. Kind of just flushed it down the toilet when you fired Dubas.
But it is still the core four. This is not like this hockey team is not going to be bad. Like as we were saying, the problems for this team lie in April and May. As for next season, well, where do those changes kind of put them? And we'll begin to discuss that. But just to kind of recap last season, as a reminder, they went 46, 26, and 10. 102 points, third in the Atlantic Division, and as we said, lost in round one, game seven, to the Boston Bruins. What did they do subsequently? We talked about Marner not being moved. Let's get into their actual moves. And as I said, some of them they look really good from the outside. So let's start with who the Maple Leafs lost. I think most notably of all is definitely Tyler Bertuzzi, someone who they brought in, I think it was late last summer on a 1 year deal. Was a staple in their top six and was kind of a breath of fresh air, someone who scored goals in a very different way and more net front. And obviously, he brings kind of that Brad Marchand esque ability to his game. That was a big hole to fill, and they really didn't go out and replace him. As we get into more of their lineup construction, you'll see they're kind of resting his responsibilities in the hands of guys like Matthew Nyes, like Bobby McMahon, and even Nick Robertson. Additionally, they lost Ilya Samsonov, who I'm sure a lot of Leaf fans were not sad to see go. They kind of had a lot of things to say about him last season. Me personally, I was at that game back in December of 2023 where the Sabres beat the Leafs 9-3. And honestly, I have to say that is probably one of the worst goaltending performances I have seen. Samsonov
Man.
was terrible.
Yeah, all the Leafs fans are like, no, please stop, come back. No.
Yeah, he went to Vegas, so we'll see if he can kind of rebound there. But yeah, it was. I think a lot of Leafs fans would tell you that that team last year could have gone a lot farther, or at least performed better in the regular season, and maybe even performed better in the playoffs. If they had gotten the Samsonov from the year prior, but last season was it was rough, as you'll
Hmm.
recall. They really there was stretches they couldn't play him legitimately could not even
Yeah.
play someone who was slated to be their starter.
He'll probably find better luck in the casino than in the net in Vegas.
Additionally, on their defensive side of things, they lost TJ Brody, Ilya Labushkin, who they got at the deadline, Joel Edmondson, who they also got at the deadline, and seemingly, although he might come back, Mark Giordano. Um, he's still a free agent currently, but it is a bit of defensive turnover. Brody's been in there for a while. Another guy who a lot of Leafs fans probably weren't too sad to see go. He had a rough finish. Labushkin, who is a legend here in Buffalo, but also
Hmm.
outscored John Tavares in the playoffs.
Insane stat. Also, remind me what they traded to get him.
I
Didn't they
think
trade
this
another
year,
second round pick?
I think this year it was a third, but the first time they traded for him, it was a second.
The
And
amount of capital they've given up to acquire Ilya Lyubushkin twice
as a rental, both
as
times as
a
a rental.
rental is insane. But I love Ilya Lyubushkin.
In their bottom six, they lost Noah Gregor. He went to, we talked about him. I think he went to Ottawa.
Hmm.
And then also on the goaltending side of things, they lost Martin Jones, who actually came in, and it was during that stretch where Samsonov wasn't playing well and kind of steadied things, but he also headed to free agency. Moving over to their additions. We'll start with the guy who kind of made people heads scratch their heads, not because of the player he is. He's actually a fantastic player. It's just the contract he got. Chris Tanev, who is has a reputation of being one of the best shutdown defensemen in hockey, signed a 6-year deal with an average annual value of $4.5 million per season. Sounds good on paper. He's 34 years old, and he signed a 6-year contract. And he's a physical defenseman. He's very good at what he does. But a 6-year deal for a 34-year-old.
Who
I can't
plays
remember
that hard?
I cannot
Uh,
remember the last time that's happened. Something like that, where you're
yeah,
willingly signing up for that.
the math ain't mathing on that one. My assumption is he went into negotiations with Toronto saying like, listen, you give me some term, I'll give you a discount, maybe a little bit of a market discount, and I get more stability in where I want to be. He's from the Toronto area too, right?
I believe so. I think, or maybe I know he went to college at RIT, so that's why I'm kind of like I think you're correct
Yeah.
though. That's probably what
Yeah,
it
I'm
is.
sure he's from the Toronto area, and I bet you, again, making assumptions here, but it's like then you're 40 and you're like, oh, I don't even have to move back home because I'm already home. So, you know, I mean, good for him. He got his bag, but that is a very high risk move for the Leafs in the short term. I mean, in the long term, but in the short term, they got a great player out of it.
Agreed. And in the long term, what very well could end up happening is he just gets sent to Robidas Island.
Yeah.
Additionally, they did sign Oliver Ekman Larson, who had a nice comeback story last season, to a 4-year deal with an average annual value of $3.5 million. So, right off the bat, two defensemen who are going to play in their top four, probably definitely strengthening any of the guys that they had lost previously.
Mhm.
On the goaltending side of things, they signed Anthony Stolars, who put up some of the best advanced numbers in the league last season with Florida behind Sergei Bobrovsky. So he signs a 2-year deal worth $2.5 million. They're probably looking to see if that's more, if that's something that can be replicated, if maybe that was more of a system thing, given they were the Stanley Cup winners. But a nice bet there and a nice safety net in case Joseph Woll continues to have injury issues. Another player that they actually finalized signing today, it was reported on July 1st, but it took until today because people didn't know if he was ever going to play hockey again, or at least play as soon as next season. That's Yanni Hakanpää, who signed a 1-year deal for $1.47 million. And while that's obviously a defenseman that's going to be your 5, 6, 7 guy, um, he'd been a good player in Dallas, but at the same time, it was kind of strange that it had taken this long, but there were those injury concerns. And with that deal being finalized today, it seems like he'll play for the team next season. Additionally, they did sign Max Pacioretty to a PTO, and while you can probably put an asterisk or a question mark next to it, I don't know. I feel like that's a deal that probably ends up being signed. They're looking for cheap scoring, and Pacioretty, given his injury troubles, it's not a bad you know, low bet, high reward type signing if they end up completing a contract. And then I did throw this one in there for fun. They did sign Alex Nylander to an AHL deal, but hey, you never know. Maybe they sign him to an NHL deal and call him up sometime during the season to play with his brother.
That'd be funny. Put him
It
on the
would be
same
funny. It
line
would be fun.
with
I mean, he was
Austin
good
Matthews.
he was good with Columbus last
I'm
year.
surprised Columbus didn't give him
Yeah,
another contract after
or
that.
another or any other NHL team, really.
Yeah, but looking at the key additions as a whole here, I gotta say, and I hate the Leafs, but I am a little jealous. I would have loved a Chris Tanev on this team. I would have loved an Ekman Larson on this team. I feel like Pacioretty's kind of our Jason Zucker contract or Jason Zucker uh comparable, just because probably on the wrong side of their career, depth scoring at that point. Um, Other than that, it comes more on the defensive side of the puck. I have an OEL jersey if you didn't know. Um, any defenseman depth would have helped the Buffalo Sabres in the short term, but those are some good signings by the Leafs, so kudos to them.
So with that, let's kind of move on to the main questions and storylines that I have for the team moving into next year. So to start things off, we talked a little bit about it in our intro, but what is going on with Mitch Marner? Now he's gonna play for the team this season. That looks to be certain. But he's headed into this contract year. There's kind of some talk, not that not that he's going to talk to them about an extension, but that he's prepared to maybe go to the table. What's happening here? Because I mean, me personally, if I'm a Leafs fan and even as an outside observer, like why I couldn't imagine a scenario where he signs another long-term deal with this team. So if anybody has that mentality in that organization, it's in especially Brad Tree living. It's sort of like, well, you can't lose this guy for nothing. I mean, if you let him walk to free agency, that is objectively worse than not trading him for an asset.
Hmm.
So is he gonna play out this season here? Are they gonna give it yet another go and kind of risk it all, or are they maybe are they going to extend him to another another double digit extension?
I personally I think the writing is on the wall for this guy here. He's no listen, Mitch Marner, fantastic player. He's gonna get you 90 points a season. He just doesn't show up in the playoffs. He's proven that. I mean, Ilya Lyubushkin showed up. I don't think Mitch Marner and John Tavares were anywhere to be found during that time, but um, I think a lot of people in Toronto are just kind of sick of the same old, and if they have to make a change somewhere, it's I guess at this point it's going to come at the end of next off season, but my estimation would be they see how the first few months of the season play out, and then when deadline time starts to roll around, maybe they start, inquiring with other teams about a short-term rental. Um, I mean, he would else he's not RFA anymore, so um, that's probably the best value you can get out of him at that point because as an organization, you've lost your leverage. Like you could have done this 2 years ago, and now you're kind of racing to the end here. And if it's another one of those seasons where it's same old, and they're looking at another first round exit, and then they do lose him for nothing, what does that say about the management?
Poor planning. I mean,
Extremely poor
what else
planning.
can you really say?
Or
Um,
you just extend him, and then the fan base is rightfully not happy.
right, because it's like he's not going to take a pay cut.
No,
So
absolutely not.
you're handing out like, he could sign another $11 million deal. You can't do that again. You can't. Like this can only end with a trade, right? This can
Oh,
only. I think he could put. He could have like I hesitate to say a McDavid like season because he's not McDavid, but he could have a Kucherov season where he scores 130 points. It wouldn't matter to me. Like I'm trading this guy. You have to change something, which is I know it's been the narrative in Toronto. This group, this core, it doesn't work the way it's structured, and he's a big roadblock to attempting to change it because that contract and it's just so much and I don't know. I mean, look, they like I said, they did a good job with who they added this offseason. Their struggle for so long has been I mean, especially they haven't had a right-handed defenseman as good as Chris Tanev during this time, and their play on the defensive side of the puck hasn't been good for the better better part of this core's ascension to the top of the league. But still, they lost Tyler Bertuzzi. They weren't able to replace him in large part
Mhm.
because of that Marner contract. They
Yep.
might be fine. Nick Robertson could break out this season, or Nyes could ascend to another. He could take another step. Or the story of Bobby McMahon continues, where he just continues to be an unexpected good story.
Mm.
But you don't have the ability to go out and sign an upgrade or a replacement because of Marner, because of all these deals. I mean, it's the same old story. It's the last season of Tavares' contract, the last season of Marner's contract. It just, I don't know. I mean,
I would.
I'd be pulling my hair out because it's, what's coming this season. When we get into our projections, they're probably still headed for another playoff season. Even if
Mhm.
they disappoint, they're probably, unless they have key injuries, they're probably going to still wind up in the mid 90s. But that's almost worse because, it's the last season of Marner, but you're not going all in. So I don't know. It's just, I continue to question what exactly they're waiting for here.
I think the funniest ending would be them obviously losing him for nothing after a first round exit. But I think something that would be even funnier would be somehow the organization, let's say, it's another repeat of past seasons. The organization somehow flips this around and turns it on their former captain, John Tavares, being the roadblock and the reason for why this team couldn't get over the hump, even though he was the reason they got into the second round that one year. And then they extend Mitch Marner, and then they're like, oh, here we go. Now we have cap space because the John Tavares contract came off the books.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then it
Tavares.
doesn't work again. Imagine then they come back and it doesn't work again. Then what do you do? Clean house?
Probably trade Mitch Marner. Or maybe you trade Nylander. I don't know. You do something that should have been done 5 or 6 years. Well, maybe not 6 years ago, but 4 or 5 years ago,
They
or at
just
least
want it
since
to work.
2021. Like we all knew, everybody knew when they lost that series to Montreal. It's like, what are we doing here? They
Hmm.
continue to disappoint. It doesn't. This iteration doesn't work. I feel
Hmm.
like I'm a Leafs fan right now because I feel like I'm singing to the choir here of like or preaching to the choir here like it's the same thing over and over. They're not a bad team. They can't be with this core, but they're not at that Stanley Cup level. Their season to do it was probably no, you probably there's a few seasons they could have done it, but they didn't, and that's the point.
It being a Sabres fan, I can empathize with how frustrating a hockey team could be, but this is like a whole different animal. Like I
It's
get
bigger than
not
just
making.
the team.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's top down. But again, that I feel like there's some parity there between the Sabres and the Leafs, There's some the Sabres it's a little more closed off with, rumors of dysfunctional upper management, but the Leafs it's like you could see it on paper.
Yeah,
It's
and then
pretty
also
obvious.
with the Leafs, it feels like it's don't they have like a board of
Oh
directors?
yeah, they have a
So
whole
like
board of directors and everything.
it's
It's a
this.
corporation.
Yeah, that's my point. So it's like the Sabres, it's just one guy.
The guy.
We the guy that we point
The
the finger
guy.
to. It's with the Leafs. I mean, it's so much more political. I mean, their
Yeah.
status as the center of the NHL, it puts a target on their back and just makes things all the more complicated. And it's tough. It's tough to navigate. Um, you almost feel bad. You almost do.
Yeah. When you're a Sabres fan, you really can't.
Yeah, you really don't.
Who
Because
would
oh no, at the end of the day, oh no, you might
yeah.
be a fringe playoff team next season. Oh
Oh
no.
no. Cry me a river. Who who would win in a fight? One big hockey corporation or one oil drilling madman? I know who I'm taking bets on.
All right, let's move on. Enough of Marner. I'm sure we're gonna hear all about it during this season.
Hmm.
So secondly, the second biggest storyline of the team heading into the season is Craig Berube. They got the biggest fish on the free agent coaching market. Obviously, he won that cup with St. Louis back in 2019, and he's been a really solid. Been at the top of the coaching class. It feels like just very has a high, um, just has a really good profile. What's his impact going to be? He's got this reputation as the tougher, the more gruff, the more just harder on his players type of coach. I remember during the playoffs they were comparing Sheldon Keefe's speech to the team before, I think it was Game 7 against Boston, and comparing Berube's to it was Game 7 against Boston in the Stanley Cup Final, and two very different personalities. How is that going to gel with this group? How is that going to motivate this group, and how is that really going to impact their play? That's my question.
I don't know. This is a tough one for me. Again, I feel like coaches are kind of like goalies. You kind of don't know what you have until you see it in action, and it's a lot of on the fly adjustments. A coach could be just as hot and cold comparatively to a goalie. I know they're kind of tough to compare in a way, but also it's look how quickly Devils fans turned on Lindy Ruff and then went back to him and then turned on him again over the course of a season and a half. Um, I think this Leafs team is lacking that, strong-headed discipline that a Craig Berube brings to the table. And again, that draws into parity with the Sabres here. I think that's exactly what the Sabres were missing. And that's why they brought Lindy Ruff in. They need, someone driven with a goal, with not a Mr. Nice guy in the locker room. A guy who hears his players, but also, knows when to make right decisions for the team at certain times. You kind of have to play both ends. You can't always be the player's guy. You can't always be the hard ass. But you could turn that dial a little bit, and I think the Sabres and the Leafs just turn it up to the hard ass side of things for a little while. See what happens. But he's got a track record, which is good. So. I mean, they
Yeah.
haven't had a coach with a winning track record since Mike Babcock, and I don't even want to count him because of all
Ugh,
the
ugh, ugh.
other stuff. You could basically just wipe his record off the face of the earth. But this could be big for them. I wanted Craig Berube. It was between him and Lindy Ruff, and we got one of each.
Lastly, their goaltending. So both of their guys, Joseph Wool and Anthony Stolars. Stolars, it's more so can he keep his, he had a pretty insane season with Florida last year. Can he keep that up with the Leafs? And biggest of all, Joseph Wool, can he stay healthy? When he's healthy, he is good. He is really, really good for them. But that has been a struggle. I mean, look no further than their last playoff series.
Hmm.
Tries to keep his shutout alive in game 6, stretches out too far and hurts himself and is out for game 7.
Such a Leafs thing. Such a
Ah,
Leafs way to go into Game 7.
that would keep me up at
Just
night as a fan.
cursed, dude. Cursed.
So that's my question. Can this tandem, will it work? Can Wool put together a full healthy campaign as the starter? And even, in the scenario he's can't do that, is Stolar good enough to take those reins?
Joseph Woll kind of reminds me of a pre-Boston Linus Ullmark, when he was with our humble organization. A goalie that shows flashes and has shown that he can be a legitimate number one goalie in the NHL, but he just can't stay healthy. He just gets hurt too much. I'm not saying Joseph Woll needs a change of scenery or anything, but these things just it comes in bunches. It's just unlucky. But sh showing the way he stepped in for Ilya Samsonov when, he was struggling. Uh, I think he could easily be a legitimate number one goalie for this team, but who knows? Goalies are voodoo. We say it all the time. So we will see when the season rolls around.
So now, why don't we take a look at each of these teams' lineups and see who we think is better? I think I know what my answer is going to be, but it's still
I
fun to
think
look. God damn it, it's still fun to look.
I have my answers too.
All right, so as always, these lineups are courtesy of the Daily Face-Off. These are not what we wrote out, and even looking at the Leafs lineup, like I know a lot of fans have kind of pegged Nick Robertson to maybe play in the top six, and even if it's not the top six, maybe it's in that third line left winger spot. So, Leaf fans, I know I'm aware that there are probably some changes you'd make to this lineup. In any case, these are the lineups that the Daily Faceoff have constructed for our listeners. I will read out each of them. Starting with the Sabres, your first line, Peterka, Thompson, Tuck. Second line, Zucker, Cousins, Quinn. Third line, Greenway, McLeod, Benson. Fourth line, Malenstein, Lafferty, and Aube Kubel. On defense, Byram and Dahlin. Power and Jokiharju, Samuelson, Clifton. And your two goalies, Luukkonen and Levi, with your extras being Krebs, Bryson, and Reimer. For the Leafs, you got your top line of Nyes, Matthews, Marner. Second line, McMahon, Tavares, Nylander. Third line, Holmberg, Domi, Yarncroke. Fourth line, Dewar, Kampf, and Reeves. On defense, Riley and Tanev, Ekman Larson, and Liljegren. And on the third pair, Benoit and McCabe. In net, you got Joseph Woll, Anthony Stolars, and your extras are Robertson, Timmins, and Hakanpää. So as always, Christian, I will turn it over to you. Just taking a general look at these two lineups. What are you seeing here? Is there anything here that's comparable? Do the Sabres beat the Leafs in any sort of category, even if it's small, or do the Leafs just continue to completely outclass the Sabres?
I'm gonna keep this one blunt. They got us beat pretty good. In the forward and I think the defense category. Again, I feel like I do this every single episode. I really am giving props to our bottom six, even though I haven't seen them play yet. I just like the identity we have. I'm not a big fan of Ryan Reeves as a player, and I'm a big fan of old time hockey. I love fights, all that good stuff. But Ryan Reeves, he just for the contract, he does not bring any value to that bottom six. Uh, Ty Domi, I thought it was a great acquisition by them.
Who, Domi?
Oh God, Max Domi. I thought it was a great acquisition by the Leafs getting him locked up.
There's some
Uh,
war flashbacks over there.
hopefully Rob Ray isn't listening to this. Uh, I maybe I would put our bottom sixes pretty close, but the top six, I don't think it's close. Obviously you got Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, not Alex Nylander,
Oh my
Jesus,
God, you're on a
William
roll.
Nylander, William Nylander.
You're on a roll tonight.
I know, and who else? Matty Nyes. I mean, he's kind of like their Paterka. I think Paterka has the edge over him. Um, but I would give the forward group to them. On defense, I don't really think this one's close. I think that the Leafs have a strong top four defense. They have Jake McCabe. I do miss him in Buffalo. I miss what he brought, even though he's probably on the wrong side of his career at this point. Uh, I probably would take him over Clifton.
I
Benoit,
would take it in a heartbeat,
yeah,
especially on my third pair. Yeah, sign
yeah.
me up.
Benoit versus Samuelson. If Samuelson could stay healthy, I think he's the better player there. Um, I think for the defense overall, I think the Sabres have the best overall defenseman
Yeah, they
on the
have this.
team.
They have the star
They
power.
have the star power with Dahlin and even Power, but I would say it probably go Dahlin, Riley, Power, and then Tanev. So it's
Yeah,
kind of split pretty
it's
even
just
there.
it goes. Yeah, probably Darlene, Riley. Um,
And then
I mean,
Power
it depends
and
what you think of
Tanev.
Riley. Otherwise, you got those four in a mix of rankings, and then it's just a run of Maple Leafs defensemen.
Exactly. And
Byram's too much of a question mark. Samuelson,
yeah.
same thing. Like I said, the Sabres have the star power. The defense, just from top to bottom with that group, it's more sure. I mean, hey, maybe the Ekman Larson revival is kind of a false revival, but on paper it doesn't look bad. And
Mm-mm.
I don't know. I it's probably the first time. Yeah, you could probably say it. The Leafs defense, it looks pretty set.
Oh yeah, it does look good. And but the goaltenders, I am giving the edge to the Buffalo Sabres here. I think there are too many question marks as of right now with the Maple Leafs goaltending. Can Joseph Woll stay healthy? Can Anthony Stolarz replicate what he did last year in Florida? Uh, UPL coming off of a Vezina caliber season, I think you immediately have to just give this edge to the Sabres here. And then they have a possible uh star in Devin Levi waiting in the wings. It's like that late 80s Oklahoma State running back room where they had Thurman Thomas and then right behind them they had freshman Barry Sanders. You know? It could be something special. Um yeah. And then the extras are kind of just, all interchangeable. I
Yeah,
like
which
Robertson
which
more than
team has
Krebs.
yeah, which team has the better players that aren't playing? I'm kind of with you there on the goaltending. Um, I, I I can't give just because of what he's done. I can't give Stola. I have to give Stolarz the edge over Levi. Um, and even that the good that Wool has played in his small sample sizes, I think you kind of have to give Luukkonen the edge because he's put together the full season. But if all goes well, then the Leafs absolutely have a solid tandem, and I think it's on a similar level to the Sabres. I think this lineup it ultimately comes down to what is going on with the Sabres forward group. What is Thompson this year? What is Cousins? What is yada yada yada? I think the Leafs just have way more established everything. Matthews is probably the second best player in the game. Marner is a stud in the regular season at the very least. You know what you're getting from Nylander, same thing. Tavares possibly he continues his decline, even though he's still been really productive the last few seasons, and even Domi's kind of like the perfect third line fit. Uh, Maybe you could make an argument that the Sabres have the better left side if you throw Benson back over there, but yeah, that forward group, I mean, it's their strength. It's what the Leafs do best, and they'll probably continue to score goals. Maybe the bottom six is a silent downfall, but they'll be fine as long as they got Domi down there. And if you throw Robertson into that mix, they should be okay. Um, yeah, it's just the Leafs are just more complete, I guess is the better way to put it. They have more star power, and you just know what you're getting out of the most part with their lineup. It's kind
Hmm.
of like what you were saying with the Sabres bottom six. You think it might be better, but you haven't seen it yet. Whereas that
Exactly,
Leafs
yeah.
that Leafs bottom six, you have seen every single one of those players play with the team and
Hmm.
seen how they perform. So Leafs fans, don't worry. We're not gonna hot take you. We're not gonna say, oh, the Sabres clear them here, here, here. No, I think the Sabres, the only things that they have that are better are star power on defense, even though the defense isn't better, and a slight edge in goaltending.
Yeah.
Things can change. They can change fast. It's just heading in. That's where my head's at.
This would be a different conversation if we addressed our top six. But
It probably would be. If you had like a Nikolai Ehlers in there, it becomes a conversation.
I like the Jeff Skinner Memorial scoreboard anyway. That's
Yeah.
my top six now.
This is how we win.
This is how we if anyone out there is listening, this is the same day that Arena Updates video dropped on the Sabres YouTube. So go give that a watch. This quotes the
the
title.
the
This
title.
is how we win.
I mean, come on. What are we doing here, man? Come on. That was what I saw. I just went on YouTube this morning, and it's a picture of the scoreboard, and the title of the video is Sabres new video board, new roof, and that's just a quote. This is how we win. Like, what do you mean that's how we win? Adding new stuff? What are we doing here?
And then someone commented, this could have been an email.
So good, so good. All right, let's start to wrap this thing up. Let's give our
All
final
right.
thoughts heading in. So now we've gone through all of that, and I just have to step in and say I think it's funny over the course of this series. I know we've kind of gone from the bottom of the division to the top, but my God, it feels like we've gotten so much more depressed with each passing episode. Less things to point to and say the Sabres are better, and just less enthusiasm because we're looking at these teams and realizing that hey, the Sabres play in a tough division, or
This will humble you quick.
at least a competitive one.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's only getting more competitive too. So buckle up. You better hope You better hope one of these young prospects could step up because I honestly think that might be their idea. I think they're saving a roster spot for a guy.
Oh my God.
I really think that's what the idea
We're
is.
back to square one.
I know, but that's what I think is going to happen with this prospects challenge. I really think they're banking on Yuri Kulik to just break out immediately, like what Zach Benson did. I mean, obviously Zach Benson did it in his first season in Buffalo, but I think either that, Consta Helenis, or maybe the long shot is Anton Wahlberg. That's
What
the
about
long shot.
27-year-old Ryan Johnson playing in his 18th prospects challenge?
If he could play on the right side, I don't know how he's even still eligible for this. He is not a prospect
Every
anymore.
locker room needs an old guy. And he's got a doctorate. No, he
He
doesn't. That
could.
was just a
Oh,
joke.
you ever see that? You ever seen Tommy Boy?
Yeah.
When he gets off the plane, he goes, a lot of people go to college for 7 years. Yeah, they're called doctors. He's like, Ryan Johnson, you are not a doctor, buddy. Make the league or get
Uh,
out of here.
All right, back to the Leafs. Going into next season, what do you see for them? Do you see a drop off, or do you see maybe a lot of these changes? Do you see it working out for them this season?
Uh, if it's anything, I think it's more of the same we've seen in the regular season from them in years past. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to their like North Division run when they just, well, obviously they're playing different teams more often, but they just like ran away with the division. They're not going to do this to this division. Um, I mean, even listening to some of the SDPN guys' takes, they were prepping for somewhat of a step back, perhaps. Kind of more of the same with the forward group. I don't think they missed the playoffs, but they could easily maybe slide into a wild card spot. Uh, but I think they have a tighter floor to ceiling ratio where I think a team like the Bruins have a much larger, you know, higher ceiling, lower floor type of deal. So I don't think they miss, but I could easily see them sliding into a wild card spot.
I think they definitely got worse on offense just because they lost Tyler Bertuzzi
Hmm.
and didn't really have a replacement for him. But they got better on defense. In net on paper, they got better. So yeah, I think they're kind of in the same tier as they were the year before, maybe on the lower end of that tier. But I think their volatility. I mean, what they had 102 points last season. Any Leafs fan will tell you that the goaltending was the bane of their existence. So you improve that, get score less goals. They're probably still like a 97, 98 point team. I think the interesting thing is where it's you almost have to factor the Marner conversation. And is this guy on the team come the end of the season, or is he in Nashville or he's in Colorado, wherever you
Buffalo.
know Buffalo. Where does this guy end up? Hey, if he doesn't want to get a new home, we'll take him.
Yeah,
We'll
hey,
take him.
yeah.
We can
I
afford him.
we,
God
we
knows we can
can.
afford him.
We can afford them. We could always just drill another oil well. And it's only a 2 hour drive.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's kind of hard to factor all that in. But I'll just go with the safe option. I'll just say, yeah, they finished maybe not low 90s, high 90s. Maybe they hit 100 again. It wouldn't surprise me, if Matthews just has another Hart caliber year. It's going to be interesting. Maybe there's something we don't see coming. Maybe Tavares really has a rough season and they don't have a 2C. Or, maybe they're injury riddled. Maybe they get rid of Marner like super early and we don't see that coming. I don't know. Chris Tanev has an injury history, so maybe he kind of goes down. I don't know. There's things that can happen to that team, but usually the bad things that happen to that team happen in the spring. So for the regular season, they're probably still going to finish above the Sabres and in that high 90s kind of very low 100s point range. But hey, maybe Craig Berube gets a lot more out of this group. I think that's definitely the wild card factor. So
Definitely.
we shall see. We'll see how they do. Leaf fans, we sympathize with you. We don't feel bad for you,
Absolutely not.
but we understand, the struggles of playing under ownership that makes you pull your hair out. So
Yep.
I hope it doesn't get figured out. But like I said, I get it. I get it.
It's like a bad soap opera. No, it's like a good soap
It
opera.
is.
You
It's
don't
fun
know
to
what's gonna happen
watch.
next.
It's
Yeah.
fun to watch. I mean,
When your team is so bad all the time, it's fun to sometimes just watch another team get dumped on.
you're not alone.
Stuff we look forward to.
I mean, sports is suffering. One team
Yeah.
succeeds every year. The other 31, they go to bed at night and don't want to wake up in the morning. So
Yep.
it is what it is. We move past it. All right. So I think that's going to do it for this one. We only have 2 episodes left, unless I'm forgetting a team, but I don't think I am. Unless we do the Sabres versus the Sabres and just talk about how bad they are for 60
Can
minutes.
they beat themselves? Spoiler alert, they can, and they do a lot.
uh, but we just had 2 teams left. We got the Panthers and the Lightning, both Florida teams. So uh, looking forward to that. Talking about the champs from last year and Tampa, who obviously had a huge sweeping off season. Um, so look forward to that the next 2 weeks. Perhaps we will bring someone else on that's been on this show previously, or I guess not this show, but the Saber Roundtable. Um, so stay tuned for that. But otherwise, thank you very much for listening and or watching if you're watching on YouTube. We'll see you guys next time. And as always, go Sabres.
Blow Leafs blow.